The day humanity left the Galactic Council was the day the universe shook. Part 1. The air inside the grand chamber of Viridia Prime hung thick with tension, like the moment before a storm breaks over dry land. 200 species filled the tiered amphitheater, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some scaled, some feathered, some wrapped in shimmering energy fields. All eyes were fixed on the central dais, where the motion for Resolution 887 had just been read aloud. The resolution demanded that Earth surrender control of its interstellar fleet, place its outer colonies under joint council oversight, and submit all future scientific research for approval. It was not a request. It was an ultimatum dressed in legal language. At the human delegation's bench, Captain Daniel Hayes sat perfectly still. His uniform was simple. Navy blue with silver trim, no medals, no flashy insignia. Beside him, Ambassador Lisa Monroe tapped a quiet rhythm on her datapad, her expression unreadable. She had spent the last 6 months negotiating, compromising, explaining. But the Council had grown tired of humanity's independence. They called it arrogance. They called it recklessness. What they really feared was how fast humans learned, how quickly they built, how they refused to bow simply because others had been in space longer. A murmur rippled through the chamber as Vrax of the Cathari rose. Tall and armored in polished obsidian plates, he spoke with a voice like grinding stone. For too long, Earth has operated outside the norms of galactic order. Their weapons development, their AI integration, their terraforming methods, they threaten the balance we have maintained for millennia. He turned his multifaceted eyes toward the human bench. This resolution is not punishment. It is protection. For them and for us all. Daniel didn't look up. He remembered the first time he'd seen Earth from orbit. Blue, fragile, alive. He remembered the stories his grandfather told about the wars, the famines, the slow climb out of darkness. Humanity had made mistakes, yes, but they had also learned. They had rebuilt, and now, after only 2 centuries among the stars, they were being asked to kneel. Lisa leaned toward him, her voice barely a whisper. Earth Command just sent the final order. They're giving us 1 hour to decide. Daniel nodded. He knew what the order would say. Earth didn't negotiate under threat. The hour passed in silence. Delegates from other species watched the humans closely, some with pity, others with smug satisfaction. The Varelians exchanged quiet bets on how long it would take Earth to comply. The gentle plant-like thalassans swayed anxiously, their leaves trembling. They had always liked humans. Their music, their curiosity, their strange habit of planting trees on barren moons. When the chime sounded, marking the end of the hour, all movement in the chamber ceased. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support seemed to quiet. Lisa stood. Then Daniel rose beside her. Every eye locked onto them. Lisa stepped forward, but before she could speak, Daniel raised a hand. He didn't need a translator. His voice, calm and clear, carried through the chamber without amplification. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, he said, effective immediately. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Shouts filled the air in a dozen languages. The Cathari envoy slammed his fist on the dais. The Varelian delegation stood as one, their faces pale with shock. A junior aide from the insectoid Zenthar collective dropped a data slate, the sound sharp in the sudden noise. No species had ever left the council voluntarily. Not in 10,000 years of recorded history. Membership was considered eternal, binding sacred. To walk away was unthinkable. Daniel turned to Lisa. Time to go. They walked out together, their boots clicking softly against the polished floor. Behind them, the arguments grew louder, desperate. Someone called out, "You can't just leave." Daniel didn't look back. Outside the chamber, the corridor was empty. Human security officers in dark gray armor stood at attention, their faces hidden behind visors. They formed a silent escort as the delegation moved toward the docking bay. No one spoke. The only sound was the low thrum of the station's engines and the distant wail of emergency alerts being triggered across Viridia Prime. In the shuttle bay, the Earth vessel Aurora waited, its hull matte black, unmarked except for a small Earth Alliance crest near the airlock. No weapons ports were visible. No aggressive lines. It looked more like a research ship than a military craft. But those who knew better understood. Human ships never showed their teeth until it was too late. As Daniel stepped aboard, he paused at the threshold and glanced back one last time. Through the transparent corridor wall, he could see the Grand Chamber's entrance. A crowd had gathered, delegates, aides, reporters, all staring at the departing humans as if witnessing a ghost. Inside the Aurora, the lights were dim, the air cool. The crew moved with quiet efficiency. No cheers, no anger. Just focus. Set course for Sol System, Daniel said to the pilot, a young woman named Chloe Briggs. She nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls. Course locked. Jump in 30 seconds. Lisa sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands folded in her lap. Do you think they'll come after us? She asked quietly. Daniel looked out the viewport as the stars began to blur. They'll try. The jump drive engaged with a soft hum. Viridia Prime vanished. Back on the station, panic spread faster than fire in dry grass. Emergency sessions were called. Fleet commanders demanded updates. The Council's central AI ran simulations, hundreds of them, and every single one ended with the same conclusion. Without human support, the galactic peacekeeping grid would collapse within a year. Their medical supply chains would falter. Their deep space navigation would degrade. Their defense against rogue factions would weaken. But none of that mattered now, because humanity was gone. And as the Aurora slipped into the quiet dark between stars, something shifted in the universe, not with a bang, but with a breath held too long. The galaxy had taken Earth for granted. It had assumed humans would always be there to fix what others broke, to fight what others feared, to invent what others dreamed of. Now, for the first time in centuries, the galaxy was alone, and it did not know how to stand on its own. The shuttle's engines whispered through the void, carrying its passengers home. Behind them, the stars seemed dimmer. Ahead, Earth waited, not in anger, not in pride, but in silence. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was not the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was the day the universe shook. Part 2. In the weeks after humanity's departure, the galaxy tried to pretend nothing had changed. Trade ships still moved between systems. Council meetings continued, though the human bench remained empty, a silent gap that no one dared fill. At first, many believed Earth had simply gone quiet to save face. Others whispered that internal conflict had torn the species apart. The Cathari envoy Vrax even gave a public address claiming humanity had collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. But the truth was far quieter and far stranger. Human freighters stopped appearing at neutral ports. Human scientists vanished from joint research stations. Even the small outposts on icy moons and desert worlds, places where lone human engineers had once shared clean water tech or atmospheric filters with struggling colonies, went dark. No messages. No distress calls. Just silence. On the surface, it looked like retreat, but deep in the Sol system, work never stopped. On Mars Colony Theta, buried beneath red rock and reinforced domes, engineer Marcus Bell wiped grease from his forehead and stared at the massive ring of metal before him. It hummed softly, pulsing with a pale blue light. This was the Helios Array, a project so secret that only a few hundred people in the entire system knew it existed. Marcus had spent 3 years helping build it, welding conduits, calibrating quantum relays, testing energy flows that bent the rules of physics. He didn't fully understand how it worked. All he knew was that it was ready. Across the lab, astrophysicist Olivia Grant adjusted her glasses and checked the final readings. The network is stable, she said, her voice calm but her hands trembling slightly. All 12 nodes are synchronized. We can activate at any time. Marcus nodded. Earth Command gave the green light this morning. They want it live by tomorrow. Outside, the Martian wind howled against the dome, but inside the air was still. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was a message. While Earth prepared, the rest of the galaxy grew uneasy. On the agricultural world of Farah 4, farmers who once relied on human-designed soil regenerators watched their crops wither. The machines had worked for years without fail, self-repairing, solar-powered, gentle on the land. But when they finally broke down, no one else knew how to fix them. The council sent technicians, but their tools didn't fit. Their diagnostics failed. Within months, famine warnings spread across 3 sectors. In the medical hub of Cygnus Minor, Children began dying from a disease called gray lung, a sickness humans had cured 2 decades ago with airborne nanites. The formula was simple, but no other species had mastered the delivery system. The council begged former human allies for help. No reply came. Then the first strange signal appeared. It came from the edge of the Andromeda border zone, a region long considered empty, dangerous, and uncharted. A Cathari patrol ship, the Iron Maw, vanished while tracking an energy spike. Days later, a salvage drone found the vessel adrift. Its hull was intact but warped, stretched in places fused with a smooth, silver-black material no one recognized. The crew was gone. No bodies, no escape pods. Just empty corridors and a single word scrawled in human script on the bridge viewport. Remember. The council dismissed it as a malfunction. Vrax called it a hoax. But fear began to spread. Back on Earth, cities glowed under clear skies. Children played in parks grown with trees from 100 worlds. Factories hummed, not with weapons, but with ships, sleek, silent vessels unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They carried no visible weapons, no aggressive markings, but their engines left trails that bent starlight. President Alan Ruiz stood on the balcony of the Lunar Command Center, watching Earth rise over the moon's gray horizon. He was a quiet man, once a school teacher from Colorado, now the leader of a species that had chosen solitude over submission. His advisors had warned him that isolation would weaken them, but Ruiz knew better. Humanity had always thrived when backed into a corner. "They think we're hiding," he said to no one in particular. A voice came from behind him. "They'll learn soon enough." It was Admiral Carol Jenkins, head of Earth's new Stellar Defense Corps. She carried no rank pins, only a small patch on her sleeve, a blue circle with a white star. "Are we ready?" Ruiz asked. "We've been ready," she replied. "We just needed them to stop watching long enough for us to finish." Far beyond the Sol system, near the ruins of an ancient alien station called Echo 9, something moved in the dark. A ship, human, but unlike any before, drifted silently through the debris field. Its hull shimmered, shifting colors like a chameleon. Inside, pilot Jake Miller checked his instruments. He was young, barely 30, with calloused hands from years of fixing engines on mining rigs. Now he flew one of Earth's newest prototypes, the Vanguard. "Scans show nothing within 5 light years," he said into his comm. "Good," came the reply from orbit. "Keep scanning. We're not looking for enemies yet. We're mapping the silence." Jake understood. The galaxy had grown used to human noise, the chatter of comms, the hum of transports, the bright signals of research beacons. Now that it was gone, the void felt louder than ever, and in that silence, Earth was listening. Weeks turned to months. The council grew bolder, claiming humanity's absence proved their weakness. Vrax pushed for a new resolution, to declare Earth a failed state and seize its former territories. Many agreed, but then the Xanthari hegemony struck. Long held in check by human patrols along the Lyra border, the warlike Xanthari saw opportunity in the chaos. Their fleets surged forward, overwhelming outdated council defenses with brutal efficiency. 3 systems fell in as many weeks. Refugees flooded neutral zones. The council scrambled to respond, but their ships were slow, their tactics predictable. On Viridia Prime, panic returned, and still, Earth said nothing. But on Mars, Marcus Bell flipped the final switch. The Helios array flared to life. 12 rings across the Sol system pulsed in unison, sending a wave of energy through folded space. For a moment, every star in human territory seemed to blink. Then, silence again. But something had changed. Deep, in hidden shipyards near Titan, the first Aegis-class dreadnought powered up its core. Its name was Dauntless. Its captain was a woman named Elena Ruiz, President Ruiz's daughter, though no one outside Earth Command knew that. She stood on the bridge watching as the stars outside bent and twisted. "Set course for the Lyra border," she said. The ship vanished. No one saw it coming. No one heard it arrive. And when the Xanthari fleet reached the edge of what was once human space, they found not emptiness, but a wall of light, humming with power, and behind it, shadows that moved faster than thought. The galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of. Now it would remember. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was the day the universe shook. Part 3. The Zenthari hegemony had not known fear in over 200 years. Their war fleets crushed rebellions before they began. Their shock troops burned cities to ash and salt. They believed strength was the only language the galaxy understood. And for a time, they were right. But that changed the moment they crossed into the Lyra sector. At first, it was small things. Scout ships sent ahead never reported back. Long-range sensors showed empty space where enemy signals should have been. Then, entire battle groups blinked out of existence. No explosions, no debris, just silence. The Zenthari commander, Warlord Kor, dismissed it as sensor ghosts. He ordered the advance to continue. He did not live to regret it. On the edge of the Cygnus Rift, where space itself seemed to fray at the edges, the Zenthari armada gathered for its final push toward the core worlds. Over 500 ships hung, in formation, their black hulls bristling with plasma cannons and boarding claws. They expected resistance. They expected a fight. What they got was something else entirely. A ripple passed through the void, not sound, not light, but a shift in the fabric of space. Then, from the darkness, shapes emerged. They were human ships, but unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, angular, glowing with a soft silver light. No weapons were visible. No comms hailed the Zenthari. The human fleet simply appeared, as if stepping out of a dream. Warlord Kor barked orders. Fire everything. Plasma bolts streaked across the void. Torpedoes screamed toward their targets, and then, nothing. The projectiles slowed as they neared the human ships, twisted, and fell away like leaves in a calm wind. The Zenthari fired again. Again, nothing happened. Then the humans moved. Not with engines, not with thrust. They simply shifted. One moment they were kilometers away. The next, they were among the Zenthari fleet, gliding between warships like dancers in a silent hall. A field of pale blue light spread from each human vessel. Where it touched Zenthari metal, the hulls softened, then flowed like liquid, sealing gun ports, fusing engines, trapping crews inside. No one was killed. No shots were fired. But the Zenthari armada was rendered helpless in minutes. From a hidden observation post near a dead moon, Captain Daniel Hayes watched it all unfold. He stood beside Admiral Carol Jenkins, both of them silent as the last Zenthari ship went dark. "They'll call it a miracle," Jenkins said. "Or a warning," Daniel replied. Back on Earth, President Alan Ruiz prepared to speak to the galaxy, not as a member of the Council, but as the leader of a species that had just rewritten the rules of war. Meanwhile, on the refugee world of Haven 9, a former farmer named Jake Miller stood in the red dust staring at the sky. He had been reassigned from pilot duty to relief work after the Helios array came online. Now he helped distribute supplies to families fleeing the Zenthari advance. A small girl tugged at his sleeve. "Are the humans coming to save us?" she asked in broken standard. Jake knelt, brushing dirt from her cheek. "We're already here," he said. And it was true. While the galaxy panicked over the fate of the Zenthari fleet, human teams were already on the ground in the ruined systems. They brought atmospheric processors that turned toxic air into breathable oxygen in hours. They deployed seed drones that planted forests across scorched earth. They set up medical tents where nanite healers mended broken bones and cured radiation sickness with a touch. No one asked for payment. No one demanded loyalty. They simply helped. This confused the survivors. They had been taught that humans were reckless, arrogant, dangerous. But the men and women in simple blue uniforms worked quietly, spoke gently, and left no trace of their presence except for clean water, full bellies, and hope. On Viridia Prime, the Council held an emergency session. Vrax demanded action. "This is a show of force," he thundered. "Earth is trying to replace the Council with its own rule." But others were not so sure. The Thalassan delegate, her leafy limbs drooping with exhaustion, spoke softly. They did not kill the Zenthari. They stopped them without bloodshed. And now they heal the worlds the hegemony burned. Is that tyranny? No one answered. In the Sol system, the Helios array hummed steadily, its network now spanning dozens of star systems. It allowed human ships to appear anywhere, anytime, without warning. It also allowed data, medical, agricultural, engineering, to be shared instantly across vast distances. Earth was not building an empire. It was building a lifeline. President Ruiz finally stepped before the public feed. His face appeared on every screen in human space and on many outside it. He did not wear a uniform. He wore a plain gray shirt, the kind he used to wear when teaching history to school children. "We warned the council," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We told them that peace cannot be maintained by control but by trust. They chose control. Now they see the cost." He paused, looking not at the camera, but past it, as if speaking to every person watching. "We are not your masters. We are not your enemies. But we will not stand by while others suffer because of fear and pride. If you need help, ask. If you seek war, think twice. Because humanity does not fight to conquer. We fight to protect what matters." The message ended. Across the galaxy, silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. A small mining colony near the Orion Spur sent a message to Earth Command. They had lost their water recycler. Could anyone help? Within hours, a human ship arrived. 2 engineers stepped out, fixed the machine, and left without asking for anything in return. Another message came from a research station orbiting a dying star. Their power core was failing. A human vessel appeared the next day. One by one, the galaxy began to reach out, not to the Council, but to Earth, and Earth answered. Back on Mars, Marcus Bell and Olivia Grant monitored the Helios array as it routed aid requests, mapped disaster zones, and guided relief ships through folded space. They were tired, but they smiled. "We're not just fixing machines," Olivia said. "No," Marcus agreed. "We're fixing the future." Far away, near the shattered remains of the Zenthari command fleet, Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the hull of a derelict warship. He had walked out in a pressure suit, tethered to his shuttle. Around him floated debris frozen in time. He placed a small device on the Zenthari bridge, a beacon that would broadcast coordinates for rescue ships to find the trapped crews. Then, he turned and looked toward the stars. Earth was no longer alone, and the galaxy was no longer the same. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was the day the universe shook. 45 years had passed since humanity walked out of the Grand Chamber on Viridia Prime. In that time, the galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 500. The Zenthari hegemony, once the terror of the Outer Rim, now sat in quiet exile, its warlords replaced by a council of elders who studied human peace treaties like sacred texts. The council itself had grown weak, its authority crumbling as more and more systems turned to Earth for help instead of waiting for slow, bureaucratic aid that never came. But the true shift was not in politics or power. It was in belief. People across the stars no longer saw humanity as reckless upstarts. They saw them as something else, something quiet, something steady, something that acted without asking for praise. Human ships appeared without warning in war zones, not to fight but to shield. They dropped atmospheric purifiers on poisoned worlds. They rebuilt schools on shattered moons. They never demanded loyalty. They never asked for thanks. They simply did what needed to be done, and that scared some people more than war ever could. On the edge of former human space, near the Cygnus Rift, a new station had been built. It was not made of steel or duraplast. It was grown, living coral fused with human nanotech glowing with soft blue veins of light. This was the first node of the Helios network open to non-humans. Any species could come, ask for help, or just learn. No weapons were allowed. No soldiers. Only builders, healers, and teachers. Jake Miller stood on the outer platform, watching a Thalassan child plant a seed in a hydroponic garden. The child's leafy hands trembled with excitement as green sprouts pushed through the soil in minutes. Jake smiled. He had once flown fighters. Now he taught farming. Inside the station, Olivia Grant worked with engineers from 6 different species, showing them how to calibrate atmospheric stabilizers. She spoke slowly, using simple words, drawing diagrams in the air with her hands. They listened carefully. They trusted her. This was the real victory. Not weapons. Not speed. Trust. Back on Earth, President Alan Ruiz had stepped down. In his place stood Elena Ruiz, his daughter, though she refused the title of president. She called herself coordinator, and she lived in a small apartment in Denver, not a palace. She took the same transit pod as everyone else. She ate in public cafes. She answered messages from colony children who asked how to fix broken water pumps. The galaxy watched, confused. Where was the throne? Where was the army of enforcers? Where was the demand for tribute? There was none, because humanity had learned a long time ago that real strength was not in ruling others, but in lifting them up. But not everyone accepted this new world. Deep in the ruins of the old council archives, Vrax of the Cathari plotted. He had lost his seat when the council dissolved its central command. His people called him a relic, but he still had followers, those who missed the old order, who feared the quiet power of Earth. He gathered them in secret. He spoke of human deception. He claimed the Helios network was a trap, a way to control minds through hidden signals. He said Earth was waiting for the right moment to take everything. Few believed him. But fear only needs a few. One night, a sabotage team slipped onto the Coral Station near Cygnus Rift. They carried old Council-issue explosives, meant to cripple the core reactor. They moved in silence, thinking themselves unseen. They were wrong. Before they could arm the charges, soft lights flared around them. Gentle fields wrapped their limbs, not hurting, just holding. Then human security officers appeared, not in armor, but in simple gray uniforms. They disarmed the saboteurs calmly, spoke to them kindly, and offered them food and water. When asked why they attacked, one of the saboteurs spat, "You're making us weak. You give us everything. We forget how to fight." The lead officer, a woman named Priya Sharma, looked at him with sad eyes. "Fighting isn't the only kind of strength," she said. "Sometimes the bravest thing is to accept help." The saboteurs were not jailed. They were invited to stay, to learn, to see for themselves. 2 of them did. News of the failed attack spread. Instead of fear, it brought more visitors to the station. They wanted to see this place where enemies were treated like guests. Meanwhile, on Mars, Marcus Bell stood before the Helios array, now expanded to over 100 nodes. It pulsed steadily, a heartbeat for the new alliance forming in Earth's wake. He thought of the early days when they built it in secret, afraid of what the galaxy might do if they knew. Now they shared its design freely. Any species that could build one was welcome to join the network. 3 had already begun. On a rainy afternoon in Kyoto, Elena Ruiz walked through a garden with Ambassador Lisa Monroe, now retired but still sharp as ever. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" Lisa asked. "Understand what?" Elena replied. "That we never wanted to rule them. We just wanted them to believe in themselves." Elena stopped by a koi pond, watching the fish glide beneath lily pads. "They're starting to," she said. "It takes time. Healing always does." Far out in the void, near the border of uncharted space, a new signal appeared. Not from the Xanthari, not from the old council races. This was something older, something watching from the dark between galaxies. Human long-range sensors picked it up. The signal was faint but clear, a question, not a threat. Earth Command did not panic. They did not arm their ships. They sent a reply. Not with weapons, not with warnings, but with music, with math, with a simple message: "We are here. Are you alone too?" The universe held its breath. Then slowly the signal changed. It repeated the music back, slightly altered, but recognizable. A conversation had begun, and humanity, once cast out as too wild, too strange, too human, was the one to answer. On the Coral Station, Jake Miller handed a tool to a young Varelian boy who wanted to fix a broken irrigation line. The boy's hands shook. "It's okay," Jake said. "You'll get it right." The boy nodded and tried again. Somewhere a star burned. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere a broken thing was made whole, and the universe no longer shook in fear. It breathed in peace. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was the day the universe shook. Part 5. 10 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, the stars felt different. Not colder, not brighter, just freer. The old rules had faded like old paint on a sunlit wall. In their place grew something new, something built not on control but on choice. The Stellar Accord, as it came to be called, had no capital, no central command, no army of enforcers. It was simply a promise. Help those who ask, respect those who do not, and never demand more than you are willing to give. The first assembly of the Accord was not held in a grand chamber or a gleaming station. It took place aboard the living world ship Harmony, grown from bioengineered coral and human-designed light filters, orbiting a quiet star in the Lyra sector. The ship breathed. Its walls pulsed with gentle warmth. Trees grew from its decks, their leaves glowing with soft bioluminescence. Children from a dozen species played beneath them, chasing floating lights that responded to laughter. Ambassador Lisa Monroe stood at the center of the main garden, her silver hair catching the starlight. She wore no formal robes, just a simple blue tunic with a white leaf stitched over her heart. Around her gathered delegates, not as rulers but as neighbors. The Thalassan elder brushed her leafy fingers against a blooming vine. A young Zenthari engineer once trained to destroy, now helped install clean water nodes in refugee settlements. Even Vrax was there, older now, his armor replaced by plain cloth, his eyes no longer sharp with suspicion but clouded with something like regret. Lisa did not stand on a podium. She simply spoke, her voice clear and calm. "We didn't leave because we hated the galaxy," she said. "We left because we believed it could be better, and now it is." No one clapped. They didn't need to. The silence that followed was full of understanding. In the weeks before the assembly, Earth had made its final offer to the remnants of the old council. Rejoin not as masters but as equals in the Accord. Most accepted. A few refused, clinging to the ghost of their former power. Earth did not punish them. It simply moved on, leaving the door open if they ever changed their mind. On Mars Colony Theta, Marcus Bell walked through a new greenhouse, his hands brushing the leaves of plants from 20 different worlds. He no longer worked on war machines or secret arrays. Now he taught young botanists how to blend earth seeds with alien soil so life could grow anywhere. Beside him, Olivia Grant showed a group of students how to read atmospheric data, not to conquer a planet, but to heal it back on Earth. Cities thrived not with towers of steel, but with gardens on rooftops, rivers running clean through old streets, and schools where children learned both math and empathy. Elena Ruiz still lived in her Denver apartment. She still took the transit pod. But now her messages came not just from colony children, but from young minds across the stars asking how to build, how to share, how to listen. The Helios network had grown beyond anyone's dreams. Over 300 nodes now pulsed in harmony across known space, linking worlds not with force but with light. Travel that once took weeks now took moments. A sick child on a distant moon could be seen by a doctor on Earth before her fever broke. A farmer on a desert world could learn rain-calling techniques from elders on a water-rich planet. The network did not belong to humanity. It belonged to everyone who used it with care. On the world ship Harmony, the assembly turned to practical matters: how to share clean energy, how to protect uncontacted species, how to welcome the ancient signal from beyond the galactic rim, the one that had answered Earth's music with its own. Plans were made not by decree but by conversation. No vote was taken. Consensus grew like roots in good soil, slow, steady, strong. Jake Miller stood near the edge of the garden, watching a group of children build a small model of a water purifier. Among them was the same Thalassan girl he had met years ago on Haven 9. She was taller now, her leaves broader, her eyes bright with purpose. She looked up and smiled at him. "You taught me this," she said, holding up the device. "You built it yourself," he replied. She nodded, then turned back to her friends, explaining how the filters worked. Jake felt something warm in his chest. This was the future. Not ships, not weapons, not even peace, but the quiet joy of passing knowledge hand to hand, heart to heart. Later that evening, as twin moons rose over the world ship's canopy, Daniel Hayes walked alone along a quiet path. He was older now, his hair gray, his steps slower, but his eyes were still sharp, still kind. He stopped by a small pond where koi from Earth swam beside silver fish from the Andromeda fringe. A voice came from behind him. "You never wanted this, did you?" He turned. It was Admiral Carol Jenkins, retired now but still wearing her simple blue sleeve patch. Wanted what? Daniel asked. To be heroes, he smiled. We were never heroes. We were just people who refused to look away. She sat beside him on a smooth stone bench. They'll write songs about us. Let them write songs about the kids planting trees instead. Above them, the stars burned steady and sure. In the days that followed, the delegates of the Stellar Accord returned to their homes, not with treaties signed in blood but with seeds in their pockets, data chips in their sleeves and hope in their hearts. They carried no orders, only invitations. On a quiet hill outside Kyoto, Elena Ruiz stood with her father, watching fireflies dance in the summer air. It's working, she said. Alan Ruiz nodded. It always was. We just had to stop trying to prove it. And so the universe settled into a new rhythm. Not perfect, not without problems, but alive with possibility. Humanity had not conquered the stars. It had simply reminded them how to shine.